Hi, everybody, and thank you for joining us in, I believe it's the fourth in a series of webinars really geared towards adult children and navigating the aging journey because a lot of us have not dealt with an aging parent before. It's a new landscape. So, before we get started with our guest, I am Jami Shapiro. I am a certified senior advisor along with my counterpart, Julie, who I will let introduce herself. I am the founder of Silver Linings Transitions in San Diego, and we provide senior move management and specialty move management. We're not just for seniors, as well as we do home and photo organizing. And my actual area of expertise is ADHD in seniors and its impact on families. So I will be presenting on that topic in October, which is ADHD Awareness Month. But that is a little bit about me, Julie.
Excellent. Thank you, Jami. Hi, my name is Julie Derry, and I am a certified senior advisor as well. I am the founder of Aging 123, and what we do is we support older adults in finding assisted living, memory care, and home care, and independent living. In essence, we understand what your needs are, what your wants are, and then work with you to identify the best option for your parents. And been doing this for about 9 years. I'm super excited about this series, and welcome back for those of you who've been on with us before. We'll turn it over to Joe. Joe, first of all, Jami and I have each known Joe for a number of years. He is incredibly well respected in the industry, and we're very fortunate to have him join us tonight. Thank you, Joe. And if you want to say a little bit about the Living to 100 Club and your background, and then we'll get started.
Thank you, Julie and Jami. Thank you for those kind words. Yes, I'm a psychologist. I've worked with older adults my whole career. For the last 6 years, I've been hosting the Living to 100 Club. All of my work previously was really in long-term care and medical populations. So when I shifted to my Living to 100 Club, I was focused on kind of extending my reach to help people understand there are a lot of positives about aging. It's not all a season of decline. And that's really what I'm all about. Look at the upsides, look at how to manage those setbacks. There's a lot of bumps and challenges that come along. How can we manage those setbacks and continue to stay positive? So a lot of it is attitude, mindset, watching our thinking patterns, how we deal with aging. I do podcasts. I've got over 200, almost 300 podcasts now in my library, several blogs, do a number of other things. We can talk about that later if we have time.
Yeah, so we wanted to invite Joe to speak because one of the things, so what I should have said was a little bit more about what a certified senior advisor is. And a certified senior advisor has a broad knowledge of a lot of the things and the topics and the issues that are going to come up for seniors and their families and caregivers. And while I was studying for the certified senior advisor exam in February, I came across a term called gerotranscendence. And I, as an ADHD specialist and learning about, especially for seniors who are just discovering ADHD, how impactful this concept was. So I would rather you explain it as the expert, but that was why I was really excited about inviting Joe and how important this ninth stage of life is. So Joe.
The best way to think of gerotranscendence is think of aging as a developmental process like adolescence or midlife. There are stages that we go through, and transcendence is one of the stages, not a phase, but just a period in our life. And I love to talk about the upsides of aging. What is there to celebrate? I say plenty. And we can look at the wisdom, our relationships, the legacy, maybe second careers, contributions to our community. One of the real strong pieces to celebrate is this idea of a period of reflection and pulling back, introspective, contemplative, looking at more of the more serious, heavy kind of issues, mystery of life, meaning in life, concept of death and afterlife. There are a number of questions, but transcendence is this part of aging that helps us to grow. I just presented last week or 2 weeks ago on what I call new chapters, new purpose. And I talked about all of the opportunities, and I call it starting new chapters. And whether it's a second career, remarrying, learning a new language or an instrument, a lot of new chapters that can be opened. And this whole notion of transcendence is one part of that process. So new chapters is kind of like the invitation to move on, and transcendence is the inner process that allows it to unfold if you follow it. So think of new chapters as opening new doors. What do I want to pursue? What do I want to do now? I've been an accountant, or I've been a doctor or a nurse or a writer. I'm going to redefine myself. We start new chapters. And this notion of transcendence is the process that allows us to unfold internally and see what is going to give us purpose, see what's going to give us new meaning. I think people might be concerned about our parent or relative or spouse or sibling. And they're more introspective, more reserved. They're kind of not as outgoing. And that's not always a bad thing. There can be other things going on, but sometimes it's this period of pulling back. And I'm really going to spend more time thinking about my life and my relationships and legacy and what I've accomplished. We don't need to dwell on what I cannot do. We can start to focus on what I still can do. So it's this period of introspection that is part of the process. And it's a good thing. So we might see someone as, oh, I'm worried about mom. She's been very quiet and brooding lately. Not necessarily a bad thing.
Yeah, and I was going to say, I have heard that what can happen in gerotranscendence, which is normal for the process, is to let go of some of the obligations and maybe not do all of the things that people have done, maybe the bingo games or the activities. And so I think it's really important to discuss how a family member can tell when it's really normal and when maybe it's depression and there should be concern.
Yeah. I think it's a great time to ask questions. Mom, what have you been thinking about lately? What are you afraid of? What are you concerned about? Can we have some honest conversation? And this is the best time to have these conversations because mom or dad may be really immersed in some of these things. Now, in terms of what's good or what looks right or wrong about it, I think it's important to have the person explain, well, I've just been looking internally at a lot of my things, my relationships and what I've accomplished. And if they don't want to talk about it, that's different. That may be a little bit more, I'm putting up walls and I don't want to talk about this. We have to watch for those walls because they're isolating. So I think if the person is not open to conversation, I'd be a little concerned, after several attempts, maybe the first or second time, maybe a week or a month later, they're more open to it. As long as they're open to having a conversation, to disclosing what's going on internally, that's a good sign. If they're not open to it, we want to be patient, give them time, but that'd be a red flag for me.
Yeah, Joe, I have a question, and it is when I think about your aging journey and it being unique, and I often share this with clients that each person has a unique journey. As I heard you talking, what came to mind for me is that even if you have like a husband-wife as clients, they're not necessarily in the same place at the same time. And someone might be, like you're saying, maybe reflective, whereas someone else is still resisting. I could see how as an adult child, I only have one parent at this point, so I don't have this conflict myself. But I could see as an adult child, you could have parents in very different places at the same time.
Yeah, well, that can happen at any point in a marriage and a relationship, right? Where one partner is moving at a different speed or pace or direction. So that's a tough one. Certainly understanding differences in members of a relationship, that's always a challenge. We build up a certain amount of tolerance and patience and acceptance of differentness. So I think that both partners need to be able to share that increased acceptance of differentness. And if one spouse is saying, gee, Ralph, you're always so quiet and reserved and reflecting, it's up to the spouse to be a little bit more tolerant. I think that's part of the journey too, Julie. I think that's one of the upsides to aging. We're less prejudiced, we're less stereotypical views of other people. We accept different beliefs, different values, different religions. I think that's part of the territory. That's a healthy part of aging. Well, there is always going to be a tension
Yeah.
in a relationship. And I think tolerance and acceptance of different is really key to a healthy relationship.
Does every older adult go through gerotranscendence?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't think so either, but I
No.
just want to hear from an expert.
I don't think so. Yeah, it's like a developmental stage, as I said. And some people don't make it. They're stuck. They're dwelling on disappointments or failures. They may be depressed, maybe brooding a lot, maybe looking at what they did wrong or relationships or disputes. And that's unfortunate because that means they're just not able to see the whole picture. And when they allow themselves to see the whole picture, I call it taking the blinders off. They can see the whole picture. Then they can see the ups as well as the downs. They can see the positives as well as what went wrong. Some people don't move beyond that. They dwell on everything that's wrong. And I say, a lot of things we can't do, but let's focus on what we can do. A lot of things we don't have, let's focus on what we have. A lot of things we miss, let's focus on what we can do and what we're grateful for. It's very easy to dwell on everything that's wrong. Very easy. And we all do that. So that's a matter of attitude and outlook and mindset. And the more we can let go of some of those things that are different and focus on what's still here, what's still good, that allows us opportunity to age well and to move into a kind of more spiritual place and more accepting place. It's not easy. I didn't see very many people in nursing homes that were able to do this. Most people are just kind of fragmented based on their medical condition or loss of relationships or being forced to give up their home or move or lose a close pet. There's a lot of loss and that consumes some people sometimes. So it's hard to move in. But, I always say it's all about resilience too, because we're going to get knocked down. We're going to hit those potholes. We're going to hit those hurdles that are tough to get over. Sometimes we can get back to normal, and sometimes we create a new normal. If we have a stroke and we lost use of the right side of our body, we may never get that ability back. So now we're developing familiarity, comfort with loss of function. That's a new normal. But we can still stay positive. We can still stay optimistic about our future. Dan Sullivan, a motivational speaker, he said our future should be bigger than our past. And he's probably talking about middle-aged adults. And I said, that sure works for older adults too, because it's easy to dwell on the good old days. We get stuck out there. So let's let go of the past and see what tomorrow can bring.
I always, and I'm sorry to interject, but because of my studying with ADHD and its impact on seniors and their family, it's so relevant to the gerotranscendence conversation. I would love to share a little bit with you guys about what sort of happened in my relationship with my mother. We always, growing up, did not have a great relationship. I always felt that I had to take on the role of parent with my mom. I know she's been very disappointed in a lot of the choices. She didn't finish college. She had failed marriages. We discovered that she had ADHD less than 2 years ago, which was the impetus for me to really go on the journey of understanding ADHD and its impact on seniors. And so many people don't even know. And since my mom and I have uncovered this, our whole relationship has transformed. And so when somebody is reflecting on their lives and they now have this new understanding, which isn't always going to be the case, clearly, but it's about 5% of the population, it can make a profound difference when somebody is then reflecting on their lives now with this new lens. And even though my mom is 78, which by the way is the age that my grandmother was when she passed, my mom and I are in a place in our relationship that, I mean, we both feel so good. And I didn't think that was even going to be possible. So that's always why, especially with this topic, I like to bring that up. If you, as the listener, as the adult child, have ADHD or you have a child with ADHD, you need to look back and see if your parent also has it.
Yeah, of course. Well, that's great, Jamie. Those doors have been opened. We let go of some of the regrets and the, reluctance about not finishing things or not accomplishing things. And We get out of that mindset. Now we can say, okay, what can we do now? What can I start today? What can I learn tomorrow? What doors can I open in my future? And that's the beauty of this when we let go of some of the ageist attitude. I don't have anything left. I can't contribute anymore. I don't have a purpose. We can let go of that and we can look at new purpose, new doors, new opportunities. That's a great story about you and your mom.
You're such a poster child for what you're doing now. And I love the whole living to 100 concept. So hopeful. And I hate the term anti-aging. I can't stand when we make a product that's anti-aging. And I'm like, shouldn't we want to age? You had provided some questions for families that I thought really good to bring up. And I don't know if before we do that, if anybody else has a question for Joe or Julie, if you wanted to say anything.
Yeah. My main question is, how does this intersect with dementia? Because our father, actually, my sister's also on this webinar too. Our father, I think he probably did enter this stage. Our mom died about 10, 12 years ago, and he really impressed, I think, both of us in how he kind of kept going and unfolded new things in his life, since then. Unfortunately, in the last year or so, it's become obvious that he has some form of dementia and it's getting worse. He's in assisted living now here near where I live. How does this kind of thing intersect with a serious brain disease like dementia?
That's a good question. It's a tough question. I don't know the answer to that, Louise. I would generally say that dementia is going to complicate the process. Although there are episodes where a person can think coherently and cogently and maybe get in touch with some of these kind of reflections, inner reflections. But generally, I'd say that dementia as it progresses is going to really hamper this introspection. I used to say in my work in nursing homes, I would talk about lessons that I've learned. And one of the lessons I always like to talk about is that we are not our bodies. There's a me, there's an I in there that's separate from whatever's going on with my physical body. So if we have a stroke or if we are confined to a wheelchair or if we have an amputation, that doesn't diminish my worth as a person, doesn't diminish my value as a person. And I would always qualify that and say, unless dementia comes into the picture, and that's a different conversation because dementia does interfere with that kind of inner reflection and awareness and ability to focus and pay attention. So I think it's generally going to complicate the process. I'm not saying it's going to prevent it. I think it's going to really dampen the process. I would just try to have some of these conversations with your dad, see where he is with some of these things. Dad, if you could start a project tomorrow, what would you do? If you could learn a new language, what would you want to learn? If you could learn an instrument, if you could start a painting, or if you could start writing a book, what would you like to write? Anything that gets them talking about, it's not the end. Let's continue to go and see what we can look at ahead of us. It may never happen. It's a conversation. Thanks for the question.
Does anybody else have any questions before I use the questions that Joe has provided for us?
Jimmy, I just want to give an example because it came to mind for me when Joe was speaking, and it was like kind of that you'll know it when you see it. I hadn't heard the word until you shared it around gerotranscendence, but I can remember early in my career as a CSA, it was like my very, very beginning. And I was going into a skilled nursing facility, and there was this older woman in a wheelchair, and she was crippled up. She was wrinkled, mismatched clothes, missing teeth, right? And as I walked up, I said, "Hey, good morning. How are you?" And I'll never forget this. Just the biggest smile on her face. She goes, "I am blessed." And my immediate thought in my head was, "Really?" But that's true. It was just like where she was at. She was just like, "I am blessed." She was sitting out in the sun. She was greeting people as they were coming in. That's just her mindset. And I love that. And that has stuck with me for 10 years. That has stuck with me as I am blessed. And I remember that wherever I am, whatever I'm doing, we navigate life. And if things happen, I broke my wrist a while ago and I'm still recovering from that. It's just whatever happens, I can always just think through that, right? I am blessed and just see all the blessings I have in my life.
And she could just as easily have said, "Oh, I'm stuck in this wheelchair. I'm not happy. I haven't eaten. I have no teeth left." But some of that may be true. It's the attitude that says, "Okay, let me put the spotlight on what I still can do." It's exactly it. It's easy to dwell on what I don't have, what I can't do. Let's talk about what we still can do, still have.
It made a difference, right? I mean, here 10 years later, and I'm talking about it, right? So she made a difference. And how many lives did she impact sitting out there in front of a skilled nursing facility every day saying hello?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And, we're getting rid of this kind of stereotype about aging meaning decline, failure and helplessness and dependency. Yeah, there's still that 5% of population that does have these medical complications and they do have some dependency needs, but 95% are still able to look at an optimistic future, a positive future, growing instead of declining. We have a lot of work ahead of us. But I think that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to communicate. Let's look at aging as a season of upsides rather than what's wrong.
So the questions that you have provided, why don't you share, Joe? That would be helpful to you. List in front of you, and then you can sort of explain why that was a question.
This is for the adult child who be wondering about mom or dad and seeing them, or when they visit, mom seems kind of quiet and withdrawn. So the question is, have you seen your loved one's priorities change over the years? Do you see them shifting priorities, which is okay and it's to be expected? Have you seen somebody's priorities change? I think that's part of this transcendent process too, that we shift priorities. We're not so focused on, you said it in your opening, Jamie, we're not so focused on all those little trivial things and pesky details. We can take time and we can be more selective in terms of what we want to focus on, what our priorities are. Yeah, we let go of some of those things we cannot control. We focus on things that we can control, like our attitude or our diet or nutrition or exercise. These are things I can control. So these are shifting priorities. Do you see mom? Do you see dad shifting priorities over the past year, over the past several months? I think that's an important indicator, measure what's going on. What do you think, Julie? Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Liked the second one where you said, are they showing interest in reflection,
Yeah.
spirituality, or existential questions?
Yeah. Yeah, that gets right to the heart of it, right? I mean, mom, are you thinking about what happens after death? Are you thinking about seeing dad again? Are you thinking about what purpose you've had in life? Are you thinking about what meaning you've contributed? Are you thinking about any legacy? These are the questions that kind of get at the heart of it. Like I said, you've seen some of these themes in your conversation, and I think that's really important. And I think we can be a catalyst, for our parent. We can be that spark, gives them the okay to talk about these things. Maybe thinking about them and they don't want to disclose them. We can be that catalyst to help them start to talk about these. And that's the beauty. That's what I think they're hungry for. I think we want to give them that opportunity to see if they're willing, or we can make some jokes about it too. It doesn't have to be all serious and heavy. We can joke about it. Yeah.
I'm going to let my woo-woo side show for a minute. And I did not mean to bring this up, but it's so relevant. So this book called The Next Room was actually written by a woman who just started working with Silver Linings Transitions. And her name is Jane Asherini. And she writes this book with her mother who has passed. And she calls it The Next Room because she's able to, going through a psychic medium, have these conversations with her mom And I only bring it up because it's something that gives me a lot of peace with the idea of dying. And it opened the door for me to have conversations with my mom and with my kids. And like I said, I'm going to let the woo-woo. If I'm in California, if I can't let the woo-woo fly somewhere, right? So anyway, just I make no money off the sale of the book, but it was really just such a great book for this time.
It's probably been very helpful for Jane to go through that process too, just to kind of project or imagine or kind of offer that speculation about where mom is or where she would be with this conversation. Yeah, it's fascinating.
Okay. The next question that you had is how can you support them in this state?
Yeah. Yeah, that's really important, like you said, because we want to give them the opportunity. And if they think there's something wrong with, think maybe morbid, to talk about death or seeing mom again after I die or seeing Mary again, they might think it's morbid or something's wrong with me, or they think I'm depressed and put me on medication or something. Just want to give them permission and support them in this process because, like I said, they're probably hungry for the opportunity to share these thoughts. Some of them may be fears. It's not all positive stuff. Some of them may be fear of death. What happens after death? What happens to my body? The anxiety. Of all things, when I did my dissertation for my PhD, I did it on death anxiety. I had no idea that I was going to be working with seniors, but my dissertation was on death anxiety. I tried to see if there's a relationship between ego strength and death anxiety, more anxious, more fearful of death. Anyway, I won't get into that. I think it's a topic that people want to talk about, but are afraid to talk about. So if the adult child or maybe the sibling or grandchild or niece or nephew can say, it's okay to talk about these things, I can support you. There's nothing wrong with it. We're not going to make any judgments about it. It's a good process to reveal or reflect or share some of this stuff. So I think we want to be very supportive. I think the risk is that sometimes we can be very judgmental. We can express our attitudes. We can express our values. You don't think that way. You shouldn't feel that way. Feelings are chemical reactions in our body. We can't control feelings, and we don't want to punish or point a finger at somebody for saying something or sad or angry or whatever is going on. Let the emotions out, because if we don't allow the emotional expression, they stay stuck and they take their toll on the individual's functioning and performance and outlook. We have to be very careful to judge and condemn or criticize or any of that. That's being supportive. Just lay out the red carpet and say, I'm happy to talk with you about these things. The adult child may be more anxious than mom or dad. He may be more uncomfortable with the whole notion of death and dying or meaning in life. It's not always easy to say, easy to do sometimes. But the idea is that we want to be supportive of this process. That's why I put these questions together. These are some of the things that help this process unfold. We want to be supportive and we want to allow it to happen. And we want to encourage it and push, just be ready when the time comes for the conversation, for inner introspection. That sometimes it's not talked about at all. I think the person just kind of stays silent and doesn't share this. Not necessarily bad or wrong. We want to give them every opportunity to share it if they can. And that's why I think I've been doing support groups for quite a while. I think it's really good to just allow that emotional expression in these settings, a safe room where people are not going to condemn or criticize each other. It's group therapy in effect. We want to allow the person to be open and offer that kind of disclosure. So the adult child, relative of the person going through this transcendent period, we want to be tolerant. We want to support it, allow it to happen. Yeah.
I want to mention someone who's looked and learned about the different generations, the silent generation, especially. It's funny because I've understood now that they're silent also because they don't talk about things. And I've heard that's sort of like a nickname for that silent generation, not just they were sort of lost between the boomers and the Greatest Depression, but that they just don't like to talk. That also is something that I think that the adult child should be aware of if they have a parent that didn't grow up talking about feelings and therapy the way that we all are now, just to be aware of that.
Yeah, that's very true, Jamie. When I started working as a psychologist, I didn't find older adults were very open to psychotherapy or one-on-one counseling. It just didn't happen. So I found it more appropriate in the long-term care settings because they were right there. But you're right. There's a lot of reluctance, especially difficult or traumatic periods, certain experiences during wartime or recovering from injuries or recovering from the assault of war. Very difficult for older adult men to talk about that, older adult women too. So it is the silent generation in a lot of ways. So it is, I guess I'm talking about kind of the ideal where we
Yeah.
can offer this setting, we can offer the support, we can open the doors and encourage these themes to emerge. Easier said than done.
What I'm really hearing that in that, Joe, is accepting where your parents are. Because not everyone is going to be open to the conversation. I could see some older adults that I work with resisting the conversation, not wanting to have the conversation and kind of pushing back on it. And I think for the adult children, it's just allowing some patience and some compassion and just allowing them to be where they are. They may not be where we would like them to be.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we have to start where they are. It's not easy to provide that spark. Sometimes just a single question though, might surprise the adult child. You miss your sister very much. You think about her. Or what do you think she's going through now? Where is she? Just a little kind of pepper question like, you never know. Yeah. But you're right, Julie. Absolutely. We can't force, we can't push, we can't extend. We meet them where they are.
I like that, just pepper question here and there. And 'cause that kind of allows you to gauge how responsive they are to having that conversation. Do you think about your sister, or like my father, I'll ask him about his high school days or playing football and that type of thing. And it's a great conversation to just hear a little bit more about him. And then oftentimes that opens itself up to other conversations.
Yeah.
I have a starting point.
I think the challenge is to not put ourselves in the parent-child relationship. Ideally, it's a friend-to-friend relationship, good friend to good friend. That's where the magic happens, I think, because once we're adult, child, there's a lot of other dynamics that usually come into play. So, friend to friend.
That's brilliant. I love that. That's gold right there. Yeah. Thank you.
Especially with given the work that I do, love what family memories or legacies
Yeah.
would they like to share.
Yeah, like Julie was just saying, high school with dad and what's going on. We need those memories. We need the good old days. We need the family vacations and the holidays. We treasure those memories. It's like our favorite possessions. Nobody can take them away from us. But I always add, let's not live back there, right? We have those memories. They're good times. They bring us a lot of pleasure and joy. I was doing a group once. It was online, and one of the individuals in the group was sitting back in his chair, kind of slumped backwards. He says, everybody talks about the golden years this, the golden years that. He said, I'm waiting. I haven't seen any golden years yet. Thought, I said, you've got to be the golden years. Whatever you think the golden years are, you've got to become those golden. You've got to become that change that you want. Don't wait for somebody to knock on your door and say, here I am, I'm the golden. Whatever golden years mean to you. And of course, there's financial limitations and there's other limitations. We can't wait for people to kind of initiate things for us. I always say, we've got to knock on other people's doors. We don't want to wait for people to knock on our doors and say, hey, let's go for a cup of coffee. We want to be the knocker and the knockee. I've actually said knockee once. Somebody said, is that a word? I don't know if it's a word. You can be a knocker or you can be a knockee. You got to be the knocker. And that means taking the initiative yourself, because that's where you get to grow and initiate that connection. Of course, we all know social connection is so important. But don't wait for somebody to come knocking on our door. Yeah, and memories are great. We need those memories. We need those good times, and we need, like I said, very pleasurable experiences. A lot of people don't have a lot of good memories, or they don't think they do, but they probably do. But those are easy questions. Where did you get this set of silverware, Mom? Or notice you've had this treasure piece of pottery. Where's that from? Tell me about that. How you've had that my whole life? Where did you get so many things kind of allow them to verbalize happen they went through their life?
Okay, this is such a perfect segue for the work that I do as a senior move manager. And something that a lot of people don't consider is there's so much of story to our stuff, and people want to be remembered. And, if you ask a bunch of seniors if their adult children and family is going to want the stuff that they're not keeping, nobody ever raises their hand. But what I suggest that people do is actually a family show and tell. And now we can do it over Zoom where they can say, this was my Girl Scout sash, and I was a Girl Scout back in whatever. And then it's kept for everyone,
Yeah,
and the legacy is. So I just wanted to
yeah,
share that. It's something that I offer to my audience.
that's great. I love that. I love that because it's not just keeping it private, announcing to the world why it's so meaningful. I think that's great. Looks like we have a question. Chris?
Yeah, hi. Sorry, I don't know how to do the little
Oh,
hand raising. But I was wondering, one of my daughters had mentioned that there are books that are out there that ask questions like you had been
mm,
mentioning, what did you do during high school? What was your
mm.
favorite thing to do or whatever, those kinds of questions. And the intention is to have a grandparent write it down. Is that as helpful? Just because my kids, they don't get to see grandparents quite as often, they're further away.
Yeah,
Is that helpful? Or
it's close. It's really, if they, can they have one-to-one interaction on a phone call or FaceTime or something?
that's better to do that?
It's the exchange. It's the process. It's not the content. If you know what I mean? The actual exchange one-to-one is so much more valuable than what the content is. So that's what I would always recommend.
Okay.
I
Okay,
just
thank
want to
you.
throw out too, I regret so much that I didn't record my grandparents. And these conversations can be recorded over Zoom,
Yeah,
that you can have that. So I just wanted to add one more layer.
I've heard about these holograms or avatars that are created now, and they fill this database with information about a parent, and it can create this, becomes animated, and the vision or the avatar or the image of the parent is right there and having a conversation, and we ask it questions. I think that's scary, but it's got great potential. We could have Dad talk about, oh, did you build all those houses? Not have all this technology, whatever. You could get that kind of information when the parents passed away. It's possible. That's
I have to tell you, I did a virtual reality at the photo managers conference, but virtual reality, it was as if you were sitting across having coffee with a loved one. It was amazing. I can't wait until we have that kind of technology.
yeah,
Wanted to ADHD all over you guys.
yeah. Well, I really like that concept, though, Jamie, about being able to share what those prized positions are and show and tell. Like I said, it's process over content.
And then
Actually, I don't know of any books. I'm sure there's got to be a lot of information, like questions to ask mom or dad, or as mom or it's older, what can I talk about? There's probably a lot of information.
don't you have conversation cards? I see them behind you. Are they?
You can see my 12 card decks. Yeah, these are favorites. These are 12 modules that I've written. This is number 12. It's called The Opportunities for a Rich Life That Lie Ahead. And they're a collection of cards, flashcards. There's sections. One section is on lesson plans, and one section is on knowledge deep dive, and then one on activities, inspirational stories. And they're loaded with information. Each card has a QR code that takes you to the source of that document or a video or a book or an article. It's the best kept secret in San Diego. I don't know what else to call it. Anyway, 12 decks, they're available on, I have a Shopify store. Which 100 solutions. There are all 12 modules there. The hard decks are available, and I also have a PDF version. So I wrote them for activity directors and program directors. One module is on overcoming depression, and one is on starting new chapters, and one is thinking style, changing your thinking. Anyway, there's a load of content, 720 cards over 12 modules. A lot of content. Thanks for bringing that up, Jami.
Does anybody have any other questions? I've got one more that Joe provided before we kind of end, but I want to make sure that we've addressed everyone's questions who are on the call. Okay, well then the last question that you had, which I think is such a great way to end, is how can we create space for quiet moments and deep conversations?
Yeah, I think that's creating the environment, the setting to allow this to happen. It's usually not going to happen at home, especially if there's others around. So I would always say, let's look for some places of solitude. Can we take a walk? Can we take the ferry to Coronado? Can we take a walk in the park or by the lake? Anything that allows, even if the person is ambulatory, we can still use a wheelchair or a walker, but anything that allows a private time. I remember my father was older and he was asking me about my work, and I went home to visit. We spent a couple of hours. We just went to get some ice cream on Lake Ontario's our favorite custard place, and we just spent a couple hours there. And he was asking about my stuff. I was asking about his work and his history. You really need a quiet time. You really need space to eliminate those distractions. We're easily distracted already. This is tough enough to talk about. So let's find those places that are just more reflective and free of the traffic and car horns and sirens, all that stuff.
This has been absolutely amazing. I would love for you to come back and talk about death anxiety, because I will tell you that it is my personal biggest fear. I think that would be fascinating. And for nobody else, I want to hear it.
Something that happens to all of us, for sure.
Do you have any closing thoughts that you want to share, or if anybody has any questions before we wrap up?
I did. I wrote some thoughts down. Let me see if I can find them. So, aging isn't about fading away. It's about distilling who we really are. The beauty of later life is that we've let go of what doesn't matter, and we're finally free to live on purpose. So we help people live longer, and we want to help them live deeper. That's part of our role. Not too profound, I hope.
I love that. Live deeper. That's a nugget.
Jami and Julie, thank you very much for this invitation. I always enjoy talking about these topics, helping to raise the bar about what aging can be and aging well can be, and successful aging, and all of these themes. And let's get rid of that negative view, and let's stop dreading getting older, and let's look at all the great things that lie ahead.
Absolutely. We definitely have to stop that anti-aging.
We have a lot of help coming out of Hollywood on that front.
Yeah, like the silver tsunami, like we're all going to be devastated. We're going to be overrun. Well, tsunami has a negative connotation. That's not fair.
We are starting to see some positive out there.
Yeah.
We're definitely starting to see some people step up and just embracing where they're at in their lives. I think that we started the conversation around gerotranscendence, and I think we do, if we're paying attention, there are examples, even in the media, of people that are embracing the aging process.
For sure. Yeah, we see all these the 80 and 90 and 100 plus, and people are doing things my parents weren't doing in their 70s and 80s, for sure. So, yeah, we are seeing more of that, and good role models, and really letting everyone know that there's a lot more potential here. That's a good point, Julie.
So, Jami, do we want to just touch on, since we have a couple minutes, to touch on our topic for next month?
I think that's a great suggestion. Yes. Do you want to introduce the next topic?
I don't have it directly in front of me, but I do know, and if you have it, fantastic. We're going to be bringing Jacqueline Silverman on, and Jacqueline is a certified agent in place specialist. We know that from most recent research from AARP that 75% of people want to age in place. We also know that only about 45% are able to do so easily. So we're going to bring Jacqueline on, and we'll be talking about having her share with us some tips and tricks on how to set yourself up to age in place gracefully in your own home, and services and support that can be brought into your own home. Anything to add, Jami?
Yeah, I was just going to say that it's going to be on September 2nd at 30 p.m. We are trying wherever possible to honor the first Tuesday. So you can plug in, and we would love to have all of you back and invite your friends and families. Hopefully you got a lot of benefit